Another schedule health metric is your critical path test. So all the metrics leading up to this, we're looking at making sure you had logic and making sure it was sound. Now we're testing that logic out. Because if you don't have a good critical path and the logic is not sound, you can't perform those what-if drills because your schedule needs to be a forecasting dynamic model that can do these what-if drills. And that's my favorite part of scheduling is saying, if we do this, what happens to the rest of the schedule? Can we pull things in? Does it push things out? So this is putting it to a test to make sure that you can use it as that type of tool. Now, all you're going to do is pick where the beginning of your critical path, which is a task that's either in progress or is starting today, and add an erroneous number to the duration, like 600 days or more. And then making sure that the very last task of that critical path also moved out the 600 days. Then you know you can use your schedule as a tool to do what-if drills.
So the critical path test, it is measuring the integrity of your schedule's logic. We've been focusing on logic with all the previous metrics, and this one is looking at making sure that you've got it and it's testing it to make sure it's accurate. So why this is important is because good logic allows you to perform what-if drills and make better decisions. Because again, we want this to be a tool for the project managers to make decisions off of what past performance is, what the future looks like, and make decisions to get us back on track if we've fallen behind, or make sure that we don't get hit any pitfalls, because the better you plan, the easier it is to execute. So, and then there's the what if drills, and your what if drills of saying, okay, what if we did this? How does it affect everything else? You wouldn't be able to do those if you don't have good logic in your schedule. Things are going to be stagnant and stay the same, and then that's the whole point of schedule. And that's my favorite part of scheduling, is doing the what if drills of saying, okay, if this happens, how does it affect everything else? And can we do this? And can we do that? It's an exciting part, but you can't do it if the logic is wrong. So this is a test to make sure your critical path is sound. The field use is you're going to look at the finish date. Pretty simple. And duration. How do you calculate this? You're going to locate the first incomplete task on the critical path. So again, your critical path is not necessarily your entire project in that path, because your critical path is only from time now to the finish. So it's going to pick a task that either is just started or a task that is currently in progress. So you're going to find what that task is on the critical path, and then you're going to add to the duration. So an example is you want to add a big duration, not something that's 30 days and something, because that's the whole point of it. The recommended is maybe like 600 days. You could go further if you wanted to, but let's stick with 600. And then you look at the project end. So that very end of your critical path, which should be your project end, the very last task in your project that says this is what means that the project is complete, because we have this task done or a couple of these done. But you look at that very end. It could be a milestone or it could be an actual task. And you're going to see that it also moved 600 days or whatever amount of that you chose for the test. The goal is you want to pass it. You want it to be true that yes, you added 600 days to this task, and your project and that final part of your critical path also moves 600 days. So that's what you're going to test. And if it doesn't, you need to go fix something. So here's an example. So let's say our earliest task is framing. That's the one that's currently in progress. We're going to add 600 days to that duration of the framing task. Then we're going to go down to the very last task of the project, which is our project complete or the move-in date. And we're going to verify that it also moved out 600 days. If it did, we pass. Metric is good, easy enough. If we fail, then that means we need to go look for any hard constraints or gaps that are in the schedule that caused that failure. It just is saying that there's something broken. There's some kind of constraint of something, or there's gaps where you didn't link something appropriately. Like your critical path should always be something that's open right now and is happening now. There could be something broken where there is a task missing that you veered off into 3 paths and then you went back to 1, and then the main driver. You've got something that's not linked right. This is how you would find out. So this is not calculated in any other way. It's a simple thing. You do it by hand and you just say, hey, add 600 days to this task and put it in there. So let's go to project and check it out. So here in project, we have our framing task that is currently in work. But what I'm going to do is just filter on just the critical task. We have them in red, but I just want to see them all on one page. So I'm going to go up to my view tab, click on filter, and there's a pre-built one called critical, and just click on that. Now I can see all my critical tasks in one place on the same page. So we're looking at this framing task, and currently it's 125 days in length, and it's ending on January 1st of 2024. So when I add a number like 600 days, that's roughly about 27 to 28 months of working days, definitely greater than 2 years. So I will want to see a slip that is greater than 2 years to this January 1st date. So I'm going to type in 725 because that's the 125 days adding the 600 days. And when I push it out, let's now look at the project complete, which is my last task of the critical path, and make sure that it also moved out the same amount of time. So you can see that I went from January 1st of 2024 now out to April 20th of 2026. So that's roughly about 27 and a half months. Maybe slightly a little bit more. So I want to go down to my project complete. That date was February 1st. So let's go back and verify because I did not bring that up first. Sorry, it was February 14th was the date. So we want to calculate what is 2 years, 27 months and a half. What would that calculate to be? We should be around June, the first week of June. Somewhere in there is what our end date should be. So I'm going to add back that 600 days to the 725, and I look at my project completion, and it is saying that it is now June 4th of 27. So before it was February 14th of 25, so it has definitely slipped out the same amount of time. Now, the reason why you have this test, this looks pretty simple, and it really is. But if you had any kind of gaps or hard constraints on your critical path that weren't allowing it to be a dynamic model, then this would have broken. It wouldn't have moved out. There would be a gap somewhere. So this is helping you identify where that gap is. You want to make sure that the first part of the critical path and the last part of the critical path move. And if they don't, then that's where you need to go and fix where the problem is. There's something, a hard constraint or some kind of gap in task that is not appropriate, and you need to go fix those. So a recap of this is a simple test to just validate the logic in your schedule. There's nothing broken, so that way you can do what-if drills and make better decisions. Because again, this is a decision maker tool, is you're looking at current data and making decisions off of it. So we're going to be using the finish and the duration field, and then you're locating the very first task in your critical path, adding an erroneous number like 600, and then making sure that your project completion also moved that same amount of time. If it doesn't, then we need to evaluate the logic in your schedule and make sure things are tied appropriately. But this is just compounding on all the other metrics that you use to make sure, yes, you have logic, there's no high durations, there's less float. Those were all in preparation of this metric to get you here to make sure it still works, and this is the final test. You got to make sure that this passes along with other things to not only do the what-if drills, but to make sure the other metrics are helping and they can also perform accurately as well.